Hey, you got calls? So, I'm back. It's been far too long. It's been a good week. It's been a long week, and there's a reason why. But before I get into any of that, just want you to know we are here at episode 71 of the CarQuicks Podcast. Welcome back. It's been a while, like I said. I didn't really miss a week. The reason why I didn't have a podcast up last week was because I was at the SEMA Show. And I mean, it was before I get ahead of myself. How are y'all doing out there? How's everybody feeling? Your family, your loved ones? Glad you can come back and join me for yet another episode of the CarQuicks Podcast. Cameron Biggs, your host. I'm glad to be here. Glad to be speaking with y'all. And this is a recap of last week. It won't be that long. I'm just going to kind of speak my thoughts and the things that I liked and the things that I discovered when I was at the SEMA Auto Show, or the SEMA Show. They don't call it the SEMA Auto Show. The SEMA Show 2024, last week in Las Vegas. I was there as my wife. She held me down when it came to taking the pictures because it was sensory overload, right? This was my very first time being at the SEMA Show. Years and years of just looking at the car builds when they would do the reviews and just following the hashtag on Instagram and just looking at all the stuff that was there and just being like, man, I need to get to this show and just see this stuff in person, because it's been something that has been a point in my entire life, loving cars, watching them, and just wanting to know, how can I get there? Well, the podcast got me there, okay? The podcast and the YouTube channel have been doing things that I just didn't think could be possible, okay? Not even from my own accord, okay? These things were prayed about. These things were, manifested. I thought about the things that I want to do, and I still think about the many other goals I have when it comes to this podcast and it comes to the YouTube channel. So we aren't done. This is very much the beginning stages of where I see myself going and seeing where this is going to take me. And regardless of where it ends up or where it doesn't end up, the journey right now is a great time. This is fun, right? I don't do this because I have to make this amount of money. I have to get this amount of parts. I do it because I just literally enjoy it. Like, this is just fun. So, SEMA Auto Show. I keep saying SEMA Auto Show and the SEMA Show. I don't know. It's cars, auto, but the reason why I don't say auto is because there's trucks, there's vendors, there's buyers, there's suppliers, there's everybody there, right? So, Tuesday, we get into... I'm just going to give a whole recap of the whole week. So we fly into Vegas late Monday night, around like 10 o'clock, 11. There's obviously, even when you're at the airport, you can see some people that got hoodies on that say some speed shop or something from another state or another country. And you already know that everybody's here for the SEMA Show. So, we get ready. We go stay at the Circus Hotel. No, it's not the greatest hotel in the world. I know we got things like the Aria and Fontainebleau and everything else that is available in Las Vegas. But the whole reason why I stayed there was because my first time in there, let me be as close as possible to the convention center as I possibly could. And this Circus Hotel is literally across the street from the convention center. So for me, the convenience outweighed the lack of amenities that some of the other casinos and some of the other resorts have, because I wasn't there to lavish in whatever the other casinos and resorts offered, because I wasn't there for that. I was there for the SEMA Show. So we get there at night, check into the room. Things go fairly smoothly. I mean, it's a crowd of people in the lobby, so they're not going to have everything as so tightened up as you would imagine, but it's cool, all right? I'm not there to complain about little things like it taking 5 minutes or 10 minutes longer to check into a room. So we get settled. It's late. I grab something to eat down in the casino they got at the bottom floor. We basically go to sleep because I already know that tomorrow morning is like day one and it's getting cracking and we got to figure out what we're doing. So we get everything ready. Day one shows up, wake up early. It's like 7 a.m. We make our way across the street. We find out that they have a little Tesla loop under the Las Vegas Convention Center, which is basically the tunnels that he bored out from the company, Boring Company. And You can take those to either side of the convention center. Very convenient. And we will talk about that later, why that's so convenient. So we get over there, get to the media center, get my credentials. My wife already had hers. And it's like off to the races. And the funny thing is, because I had never been here, you almost don't even know where to start, right? You look at the map, they show you the halls. You got the Central Hall, you got the West Hall, you got the South Hall, upper and lower. You got the North Hall. You got the outside bronze lot. You got the silver lot. You got all these areas where there is things happening. Like it's happening right away. Like there's no holding, there's no waiting. Like as soon as you're walking across the parking lot, I'm walking to go into the Central Hall. Folks, there's stuff happening outside. Somebody's drifting over here. There's a car over here that looks absolutely insane. There's a truck over here that looks crazy. And when I say sensory overload, literally sensory overload. Like I was walking through cars and just stopping, and my wife's laughing like, you can't even contain yourself. I'm like, hold up, wait a second. This looks ridiculous. I'm looking at this car, turn my head. I'm like, hold up, what's that over there? I'm walking across the lot. And I'm not even making my way into the Central Hall. I'm trying to get to the main entrance, and I'm getting distracted along my way. So I focus down and say, okay. Everything is looking crazy just from my first view. So let's make my way into the Central Hall. So at the very least, I can just get focused on that. So we get to the Central Hall, and let me tell you something. I know that there are many who have been going to the SEMA Show for years. Maybe decades now, 20 years. So I'm new to this. I'm talking from the perspective of somebody who had never been there. I've only ever seen it on video and in magazines. So there are those that are going to, be a little jaded, or they're going to just feel like, I've already done this. Like this is nothing new. I'm tired. I don't want to come. The company's making me come. We got to stand in a booth all day. It ain't easy work. I could tell from the vendors I saw and the people how much work they were doing that. Yeah, it's a lot to happen during the week, but just entering it was just an amazing experience. I don't want to make this sound so like hyperbole or just so like, man, you really don't be out that much, CarQuicks, but it truly was an amazing experience, even on the very first day that I walked in there, just to feel the energy of the vendors, to see all the cars, to see the people, and to basically brush shoulders with those that are deep within the automotive industry, whether it's aftermarket, manufacturing, supplying, building, designing, whatever it may be. They were there in that building. So it was cool to just feel that energy amongst those people. So the very first day I'm walking in, and I just run and gun it, right? Because I realized there was no way that I was going to be able to record any type of video with any sense of, I say direction, but what I mean is I didn't know where anything was. So I realized I got to do this vlog style. I got to bring up the camera and talk about a car and see something that I see and just have a conversation with people. So if you didn't know, there's a YouTube channel by the name of CarQuicks. Shocker, like and subscribe. And I have day 1 and 2, probably day 3 and 4 will also be on there by the time you listen to this podcast, but they're all up on that channel. My little vlog style of showing off the cars, the time I was having there, and it was just a good time. Like that's what the way I wanted it to go. I wanted to show you like, hey, here's just a everyday perspective of me going through the stuff, showing you what I was working on, showing you what I was doing. So that's the way I wanted to do it. And just, the level of detail on some of these car builds, like you see this stuff on TV and in magazines, and then you stand in front of some charger that is built by the likes of a great fabricator or a metal worker or a machinist, and you're just looking at the details. You're just like, how could this be? So it's just, you're looking at such high quality car builds. I'm not saying that there weren't some things there that were questionable, and we'll get to that in a second, but the overall, the ones that were coming there to show you, I want to show you how good I am at what I do, they delivered. From muscle cars, classics, trucks, imports, JDM cars, everything. And because I like everything, for me, it was having to kind of figure out a way to tone down what I was recording. Like I was like, okay, I can't record 7 hours of footage because there's no way anybody's watching a video that long, and I can't even edit that much. So I had to pick and choose. Even the stuff I picked and chose on my video, That's not even half of what I saw. My eyes saw things and recorded things. I was just like, I'm not even going to put that in the video. I mean, it's already enough as it is. And you can't capture everything and you can't see everything. And I didn't understand that, having not gone to SEMA before. Many people said, you're not going to be able to look at everything. You're not going to catch everything. And you're definitely going to be walking a lot. And I was like, cool, I'm just going to go in there. I'm going to do my best. But you really cannot see everything. Let me give you an example. I'm walking into the show. We go to the Central Hall. We're checking out. Immediately, it's just fire cars right in the front row. There's a BMW M2 with a V8 S54 swap on it. There's a electric motor EG hatchback right there at the front. There is a Camaro with Magnus supercharger with an old school 60s wide body kit built around a new Camaro chassis right next to that. Then next to that is an off-road company with these giant monster 40, 50 series tires on buggies and Wranglers. I mean, full off-road pre-runner style trucks. This is all within the span of 30 feet. So I'm looking at this, turning my head, looking at this. And so that's when I realized, that's like, oh, that's what they're talking about. Like, I'm over here recording this. I turn my head, I see this. We go down the aisle. We're looking at a Porsche. They got Traxxas there with all the, RC remote control cars. I'm trying not to geek out over there for the next 3 days. So I'm like, okay, I got to pass by that. We go past another booth. We're looking at a 60s Lincoln. HKS is at the very first section I'm at the Central Hall. I'm looking at their Type R. They got a Nissan Z there. Cybon is over there with the carbon fiber. They got Voinsteiner over there with their wide body kits on Lotus Emiras and McLaren Naturas and Range Rovers. And there's wheel companies, and Valvetronic has their exhaust titanium hanging from the ceiling practically next to a carbon fiber bodied E30. I mean, I'm just looking around like, I don't even know where to begin. Where do I begin? And the reason why I knew you couldn't see everything is because, I'm going to fast forward a bit in the story, is because when I went back the second day, me and my wife cut through a different entrance on the Central Hall, and we're like, where are we at? Like, we legit were like, wait, are we in the Central Hall? We're like, yeah. She's like, well, why didn't we see that? I'm like, yeah, how come I didn't see this? It was like 7 booths that I did not see. And I'm like, how did we miss all of this? Like, we were legit confused. I was like, we were in the Central. We were here all day. She was like, how did we miss this? So that just solidified the fact that, hey, just know when this show's over, and when you look at people's footage on Instagram, and when you look on YouTube, and when you look at people's stories, they're going to show you something that I just didn't see. I just knew it. I was like, I'm going to see something. I'm like, man, I wish I saw that. There were a few things I didn't get to see. Like, there was a gentleman that had a Toyota Sienna that was modified amazingly. He's on the Sienna forums and on the Facebook group for Sienna as a minivan, right? And he has his modified to the nines. And I really wanted to see it in person, but I forgot where he was at. And by the time I realized where he was in the whole entire area, it was across the entire convention center on the last day when I was already exhausted. I looked on the map again. I was like, I thought it was in the West Hall. I was like, where is he at? Looked it up. I was like, are you serious? In the South Hall? And I'm like looking at my wife. She's looking at me and I'm like, I don't have the energy to go. I don't have the energy to go over there. So I couldn't even see that. And that was one of the ones I really wanted to see in person. So unfortunately, I just didn't have the energy to make my way all the way back to the South Hall to just go see that one vehicle. And just because I wanted to see it with my own eyes. And so that was a constant thing. That was the battle you have with SEMA's, like, knowing where you need to go and what you want to accomplish and what you want to do. I know for certain next year when I go, I know exactly how to plan this. And the plan really you have to do is you have to really follow a lot of these companies on Instagram, or at least follow what they're talking about in their stories. See what cars and what booth cars and what companies are there. Go to them first, knock that out. And I think then circle back to some of the other things you wanted to see, some of the other companies, some of the other cars, and just kind of go ahead and look at that after you've already kind of cleared out the main, meat and potatoes out of your entire schedule. So day one's a success. I'm tired. We make it halfway through the Central Hall, but we do get to accomplish a couple things. One was about my own car build, the GR Corolla. You already know. Okay. One of the greatest hot hatches ever created. So I had been talking with a company and I want to say they're in Taiwan, and I could be very wrong. The company is BCB, and they are a brake company that makes these upgraded pistons and rubber boots for GR Yaris's and some other cars, but mainly it's GR Yaris and GR Crows what we're talking about. It upgrades the piston boots and the pistons inside to help dissipate heat better so that you don't get melting boots on the brake calipers when you're doing hard braking, when you're doing tracking, when you're doing spirited driving, things that heat up the brakes a lot, that the rubber boot around the OEM one will start melting down and you start losing braking stability and the strength of it. So they make a kit for that. Well, funny enough, on Instagram, before the show began, they had made a post saying, hey, we're going to be at the SEMA Show. If you want us to bring you something, we're going to be there if you want to get one of our kits. And I just reached out to them and said, hey, this is the work I do on my channel. I like the work that you're doing on the car, and I like what your product stands for and what it does. Maybe there's room for us to collaborate and partner. And they said yes. And I literally met this and the owners, the family basically, who run BCB at the show. Now, very little English. I believe, I don't know if it was a girlfriend or if it was a wife, it was a sister. I don't know who it was, but one of the women there, she was talking with me through Instagram and understood English more than the other people that are there. I met a gentleman and an older gentleman who I would just say looks like a father or a father figure amongst a group of them. And we talked, had a conversation, even amongst our limited English and having to use translators. But we talked about what it is I was doing, what they like what I do. They're like, we saw your channel, we like what you do, we like your podcast, we would love for you to put this on your car, to review it, to just talk about the install. And I'm not the only one that has done this. A friend of mine, David Lee and Anthony Doe, both have this on their GR Corolla. So I'm gonna be the third person in Houston running the same kit. But the whole point about this is showing the work for small companies for the platform. And while I was at the SEMA Show, I pretty much solidified what my end goal or what one of my pillars of what I'm doing is going to be. And that is being a very big advocate and a strong figure within the GR Corolla community. And no, I'm not a person that's doing time attack racing. No, I'm not at every single track event. No, I'm not doing all those things. That's fine, because I think there are people that suits better for them because they are locked in on doing that. I'm not locked in on that. I got a lot of the hobbies I like to do, and I prefer street cars. I just prefer street driving. I prefer taking road trips. I prefer driving on the back roads. That's just my preference. It doesn't mean that it's better. I'm not some amazing driver anything. I'm not trying to say I'm better than people driving on the track. What I'm saying is, there are driver's cars, and then there are people that are focused on like track cars. I'm on the driver car side. I'm on the one that I want to do a trip through the hill country. I want to see scenery. I want to drive it spirited. And the modifications I do on the car are based on that being even more enjoyable. So once I was at the show and I saw the companies and I'm talking to people, I started having like a epiphany, like, oh, I know exactly why I'm doing this on the car. I know why I want to modify it this way. I'm tapping into a lot of it is just, it's art. Some of it is, I want it to aesthetically look like this. I want these wheels. I want the street style of car, very much like the Japanese and the JDM scene. Not everything for me, even though it might be geared towards that from a product standpoint, is for the ultimate level of performance. I'm not going to achieve 10 tenths on the street road or even on a track because it's just not my MO. But changing out those parts, tapping into that fun of constructing something and building it out to a vision. See, that's all of that. I love it. So I met up with them. We had a good conversation, got the part from them, and I kind of went on the rest of the day. I met up with Throttle, which is a YouTube channel that I follow, and I gave them my business card because while I was there, I had a business card and I was giving it out to the people that I felt it matched best with our conversation. I would give them a card and say, hey, I have a podcast. I have a YouTube channel. Check me out. The whole point was to just give people a focus on something I do. If they like it, if they don't, if they never watch it, hey, if they're listening to this now, awesome. I'm glad y'all made it here. But I met the Throttle team. They were building an R34 for the show that was there, and it looked amazing in person. And I've watched them since like 2016. I think my son was like 2 years old when I first turned on that channel. I mean, I was there at the very first episode. So it was cool to meet them in person. I took a picture with them. I know some people are like, yo, she's corny. You're like, nah. I just like meeting the people that I spend enough hours of the day watching and seeing their videos. So it's just cool to finally see them in person, shake their hand, meet them, thank them for the content, and telling them to keep going with what they're doing. So after I met them, I went on to other booths. I was checking out of the cars, and I had some really good conversations. So let's just get to that. Some of the conversations that I had about the GR Corolla and what I want to do with some of these companies really opened my eyes to the benefits of being at shows like this, shaking people's hands, looking them in the eye, and just having a good conversation. One of them is Ecutech. And I talked to a gentleman there that was a part of their development and part of their team with Ecutech, and we had a good conversation. They were also next to the Cobb Tuning booth. And I talked to Cobb Tuning and said, hey, is the GR Corolla anywhere in the vicinity? Is it anywhere in the conversation of getting an access port? And they said, yes, we have been talking about it. Now, it's not up to them. The people that control the company are the final word on that. But we had a good conversation about, what the access port was and what it means for the community, what I see that it could be beneficial for. They were talking to me about why they necessarily haven't done it right away, the length of time it's going to take to develop certain things. And then for Ecutech, I was talking to them about my end goals because, as you know, my car isn't tuned yet because I'm just waiting and putting stuff on there. We had a conversation about the factory ECU and its ability to learn things. And he said, you're correct. It can do that. Obviously to a degree. I've spoken about that in some of my more long form videos after I put a part on the car. But we just had a conversation about the future of tuning. The future was like E85, the benefits of Ecutech. What's it like compared to standalone? Is it beneficial to go that way? The bills that they've worked on, the power levels that people are seeing, where you should start changing out certain modifications in headwork, and just having a very holistic conversation about the things that are happening with the platform and the things that we're doing on the car. And the cool thing about all of that is that when I was done, as I was talking, he gave me his card, I gave him my business card, and he said, he was like, I want to work with you. We want to work with people like you, like that are advocates of the platform, that are cool to work with, that are just trying to do something for the community. And I even mentioned, I said, I'm not a person that's on the racetrack. I'm not racing and doing time attack and global time attack and things like that. Because sometimes I do think that there are some companies that more focus on that end of it. And I do understand the benefit of that. You're seeing somebody racing and winning and pushing forward a product that you're building for that type of environment. It makes perfect sense to go with them as opposed to somebody who's just driving on the street 99% of the time. But the conversation we had when we were done is that he said, that's not what all we're about. That's part of it. Another part of it is understanding that these are street cars and these are people that are daily driving them and owning them and putting miles on them. And we want to hear their stories too. So we had a great conversation that ended with the potential for a partnership. Where does that go? Is it going to come to fruition? I've spoken with them after the show and we're going to see where it goes. I don't force anything. I let things happen organically. We had a great conversation. We've had a great follow-up. And things are shaping up to have something very fun and very good come from them onto the car. So listen, I'm not gonna force anything, but I'm definitely available. I avail myself, and they're not the only ones I talk to. See, as I was there too, Forge Motorsports actually won an award for one of their products. It was called the EDV, diverter valve. I didn't actually spend too much time talking to them about that particular product because we were just having another conversation about something else. So at the booth, they were next to Miltech. And if you know who Miltech is, they make exhaust and a bunch of other parts. But for the GR Corolla, they make one of the best sounding exhausts for that car. But I didn't even talk to Miltech. I talked to one of the general managers at Forge Motorsports because he was standing there next to their engine stand. And I was just looking over the engine. I said, hey, is this for GR Yaris or GR Corolla as far as the parts that they had on it? And he started talking to me and said, no, this is actually for a GR Corolla. And I think also GR Yaris, but a lot of that stuff is interchangeable. But they had it set up where they showed all their parts, their front mount, their oil cooler, their intake, their turbo inlet, and their new EDV, diverter valve that they had developed for the car. And they was attached to a whole turbo. I don't know if that was a different turbo upgrade, but the conversation I was having was about their products. I talked to them about their turbo inlet. See, I run the 6-element one, which is hard piping all the way down to the silicon hose that goes into the turbo, but theirs is completely silicon all the way to the top. And I just always been intrigued about theirs. I just never had the opportunity to run it or be in a position to talk to them about it. And we just had a good conversation about why they chose that way of developing their inlet and the benefits that they've seen. And I talked to them about their front mount intercooler. I talked to them about the oil cooler because I saw it there and I said, hey, I never even know you guys had one. We talked about the intake. They mentioned to me, because I told them I have an MST version 2 one. They were like, hey, we actually are going to be making something similar to your shroud intake setup for our intake in like a carbon setup. And I was intrigued. He showed me a 3D printout on a 3D render on an iPad saying this is what we're working on. And as we were talking, at some point we exchanged business cards. I gave him mine, he gave me his, and he was like, I want to send you one of my coolers. Now, I don't know if he was talking about an oil cooler or intercooler. Regardless, either way, the conversation led us to the fact that they were interested in the work I've been doing on my YouTube channel and on the car. And I showed them videos of it. And I said, hey, I always preface things by saying, I know where I stand in the grand scheme of if you're looking at hard numbers, right? 2,500 or so on YouTube compared to the crazy numbers you see from much larger channels. But what was really cool about companies like him and EcuTech was that a lot of companies, and I've seen this shift a lot too, which is why I've been able to work with companies like MST Performance and 6-Element and things like that, is that they are seeing an uptick in things that don't necessarily are revealed by the numbers. Meaning, yeah, my subscriber count against somebody with 300,000 is low, but my impact is somewhat matching depending on what I'm delivering, right? And so Forge Motorsports said, we would love to work with you. We want to work with people like you that are owners, that are driving it, that are fun to talk to, that are, respectable, that we can trust the brand and the product with. And this is all just from me talking with them and just being interested in what I liked in their product. And that was precisely why I wanted to go to the SEMA Show. I wanted to just meet these companies. I wanted to shake their hand. I wanted to see them, and it did what I thought it was going to do. Like, yes, there's more that I want out of it, right? I could say I want to partner up more. I could say I didn't give out my business card as much as I wanted to. I wanted to just kind of throw it out there, like make it rain business cards, CarQuicks everywhere. But it did at least teach me about how to foster those conversations organically, right? You do have to work that muscle. Some of the stuff that you're talking about, you have to find a way to just interject and talk with them. Now, the SEMA Show is a little bit easier to do that because everybody at a booth is assuming you want to talk. Like, I talked to a gentleman at Gear Wrench because I wanted to see their tool set, because I got tools in a garage now, but I mean, legit, they're on the floor. I'm kicking around 10 millimeter sockets. And I wanted to talk to Gear Wrench because I've always seen their tools in videos, or they sponsored really big channels. And I want to just talk about the products they have coming. What do they have coming for like the, everyday garage mechanic? I don't need the $15,000 setup. I need the $1,000 to $2,000 setup that just gives me tools in an organized fashion that can function and work on anything that I'm doing on the car. And great conversation. The gentleman I met was their regional manager. He does their training, does their engineering, and we just had good conversation. Talked about kids. We talked about life. We started talking about tools, and gave my business card. And after the conversation, he was like, I'm really going to follow what you're doing. I like the podcast. I'm going to follow it. I like the idea of what you're doing. And that was just organic conversation. So for me, success, right? And I didn't even spend all my time trying to talk with everybody in order to partner with, but that was one of my goals. And not just because I don't ever want it to make it sound like it's just for the sake of something free or discounted. I truly am trying to be a great platform for the GR Corolla. I want it to be a place where people that are reviewing the car, or people that are trying to find out how to build the car or what they can add to it, come to the channel and say, hey, there's a guy out there that's done X, Y, and Z, and I want to follow what he's doing, and I want to see what he's doing. And I'm not saying this is tutorials. Like, this isn't Chris Fixit, who won best, I think it was best content creator at SEMA Show, for good reason. He makes videos that are like perfection for DIY. I'm making a story, vlog style almost, but you're following my story, and along that way I'm showing you the things that I've done and giving you some form of tutorial and some form of information to do it. I'm not a DIY channel, but I'm still throwing it in there a little bit. I'm trying to give people a little bit of steps. So that was throughout the first day. That was throughout the second day, some of those things that were going on. And it was just great to just have those conversations and see. And this is in the middle of me seeing the Rays booth, and they had a Veris equipped GR Corolla, me checking out Beat Sonic, and I listened to their setup, and I really hope to do something with them because I'm a big audio music person. And Beat Sonic had their brand new amp and a prototype sub that sits under the passenger seat that they were utilizing in a GR Corolla that had the Tom's Racing body kit. And if you're watching this video, I may throw some pictures up of the things I'm talking about, but Tom's Racing had, not Tom's Racing, a Pexi had a Tom's Racing equipped GR Corolla there. And I was listening inside to their new amp and their sub, and I was like, oh, this sounds way better because the JBL system in the GR Corolla, I mean, like, yo, I can't even listen. If you're not an audiophile, and this ain't even audiophile levels of what I'm talking about, but if you're not big into music or care that much, or the genre you listen to, it delivers perfectly fine. It's cool. But for me, no. So new amp and their new sub is a prototype because they're making it so they can fit under the passenger seat and give you enough adjustability or room to move the seat back and forth without damaging it. Or maybe later on, if you have a seat like a bucket aftermarket seat that sits a little bit lower. But we exchanged numbers. I talked to two guys there. One of them that has a really dope looking Corolla with the Pandem wing on it that I've seen on Instagram. And he was like, oh, I own that Corolla. And I was like, oh man, I love your car. So that was another cool conversation. I also got to speak with Wolfbox. Now, Wolfbox makes dash cams, and I don't have one on my GR Corolla, which I should have living in Texas. If anybody knows, like the shenanigans that are out here in these roads, like I should have been had one, but gladly nothing has happened. But I have one coming now because I went to go look at their little setup. I think my wife, she was going to the bathroom or something. And I went to go, turned around. They had a booth for the dash cams. I go over there. I'm checking them out. I'm like, oh, I've heard of Wolfbox. They make those cameras that literally either sit on top of your rear view camera or their rear view mirror, or they replace your entire rear view mirror with their digital one. And I was like, I've always liked these. I like the idea of it because it's very clean. It's very subtle. And I mean, you can swap out the rear view mirror. And as I was looking at it, a woman that runs her social media, like the content manager, walks up to me and was like, you know, if you have information, if you have any questions about it, I said, yeah, I'm looking over this. And we just started talking. And she was like, well, what do you do? Because she saw my past at media. And you might actually see my SEMA past behind me if you're looking at the video. She was like, oh, I was like, I run a podcast, do a YouTube channel, building out a car, doing videos, podcasts about the automotive industry. I'm doing videos about the cars and the parts I'm putting on. She's like, oh, what do you have? I was like, the GR Corolla. She's like, oh, I like those. She was like, have you ever ran a dash cam? I said, actually, I don't have one. I said, I'm looking at this stuff now because I only have one in my Toyota Sienna. And she's like, who do you have from there? And I said, Viofo. I can't even say the name right. It's Viofo. Now, funny enough, she laughed. She's like, that's our direct competitor. And I was like, oh, snap. I'm with the enemy. But the conversation we had after the fact is that she wants to work with me for sending out a camera. She's like, I want people that are interested in the product and can put it on and drive their car and show people what it can do. Because one of the key questions I asked them was, I noticed that you have the full-fledged whole camera system, rear view mirror. I was like, how does this do in the heat? And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, we live in Texas. And if I have this camera, if I'm doing a road trip and the sun is baking on the front windshield at 105, and how would this camera do? Like, what happens if it gets too hot? What if it's sitting outside in the parking lot and it's just been under the heat for all that time? And she was honest. She was like, yeah, it will shut itself down just to kind of cool itself down before it could turn back on. She's like, but we've tested it internally with the internal temperature inside of the camera up to like 175 degrees. And I was like, okay, that's pretty extreme. I'm not saying that it doesn't get hotter than that, but I also understand that there's only so far you can go with a camera unless you're building one for extreme climates. And usually that's in some type of casing that is in a rear view mirror. And I was like, okay, that's fine. Because if I have my windshield visor up anyways, that I normally do, is blocking this anyway. So the heat won't transfer that much. But after the conversation, I got an email later when I came back from SEMA, and they were like, we're sending you this camera that you had interest in. And now I'm going to be able to review a dash cam on the car that I actually need to use. So again, it was another milestone. It was another thing that told me, hey, you're doing things the right way. You're going about it the right way. It takes work. It takes time to build relationships and partnerships. And the reason why it has worked for me is because I keep telling people I do what I say I'm going to do. If you lend me a part, if you lend me a sponsorship, if you tell me and I tell you, hey, I'm going to do a video on this, I'm going to talk about a review, I'm going to put it in my podcast, they expect it to happen. And guess what? I do what I say I'm going to do. I'm a man of my word. So at least at the very least, if they're looking at content creators and who they want to use, I'm one of those people that can at least deliver on that. So to wrap this up, because I don't want to spend, I've already been here for like 38 minutes or 30. I don't even know how long this podcast is, but I don't want to be here that long just waxing poetic about my time at SEMA and the things I've done. But maybe you're enjoying it. And if you are, thanks for being here again. But the main point of this whole wrap up is that SEMA delivered everything that I imagined. It did exactly what I was hoping to achieve. It gave me great insight into my desire to get further into the automotive industry. And I used to be neck deep in it, right? But I've since transitioned into a career into the tech world. And I'm very, very fortunate. Like, I love my job. I'm an IT manager. And I get to do things that I never thought were possible. And I'm not naive to the blessing that has given me and the things that I've experienced in my life because of being in that industry. So being there also showed me like, man, I could do both. And I'm keeping my day job because I like it. But I do that with this on the side, the car stuff. I mean, listen, best of both worlds. And that's all I'm trying to do. And by the third or fourth day, like we got into the fourth day, just to mention this part of it, we got into the area they talked about like PPF and, colored PPF, ceramic coating, things like that. Funny enough, my wife, she's actually really good. This sounds funny, but she's really good at like applying screen protectors or anything that has to do with like window tint, things like she's naturally good at it. So she had been saying for a long time, like, I think I can like wrap a car if you give me enough time. So we were looking at some demonstrations of color PPF. And after a while sitting there, I was like, listen, like I'm down to buy a whole roll and us just do it. Because I don't have to drive my car every day. I work from home. So the benefit I have is that the car just sits in the garage. 99% of the time, I'll take it out to go to the grocery store and come back, but I can definitely just leave it there and drive the minivan wherever I need to go. So there is a future where I'm really leaning towards like DIY on the wrap and just taking our time and like letting her and myself just rock out and do it. I want to use it. Funny enough, she don't know this, but I've always had an idea of a podcast with her, and I might actually try to find a way that if we are in the garage wrapping the car, like when the kids go to sleep, do it at night, like a panel at a time, have like a conversation with the microphones on. I don't know. But the idea is there. I'm gonna flesh it out and make it work a little bit better. But we talked to some companies about that, and I'm like, listen, I'm down to wrap my own car. Let us figure out how to wrap a car, it is over, dog. I'm swapping colors yearly. Okay? Minivan might be bright yellow tomorrow, and Wednesday it's red. Okay, like we might go crazy. So I don't know. I'm gonna work towards that goal there because I want to try it out, and I also have to wrap the hood that I have for my car for little other GR Corolla updates. I have my circuit hood prepped. All I need to do is wrap it white to put it on the car. So I'm gonna buy a standard roll of some white 3M film that can work for the GR Corolla's ice cap white paint, and then I'm gonna put on the hood, and that'll probably be our first one. I was gonna do it as a friend of mine, but I might actually use her as well and say, listen, let's just try it. Let's do it right now. First one out the gate. Let's see what we can do. And I'm gonna see what else we got. But that was like the last day. And funny enough, the very last day I'm recording, every day that ended, I was tired. I talked a lot. I needed to like tea the next morning. She would make me. Very thankful for that as well, because if I was doing this solo, I can't even imagine being there by myself trying to capture all this stuff, from trying to capture a picture, from trying to capture the video, and just talking to people, carrying a backpack, carrying stuff. The amount of things that they give you at a booth, which is honestly, it's a lot, but it's really cool. Lanyards and thermos and cups and t-shirts and pins and just booklets and all the information that you can get. I mean, all of it's awesome. Like, for instance, I don't have it in this video, but I got the Rays 2024, their wheel catalog, the one from Advan, the one from Kicks, their like lug nuts that they have, Project Mu. I got all these catalogs that I've always wanted to kind of flip through and see the products and kind of circle things out and try to basically piece out what I would want for my car in this project. Because after I saw like the Veris GR Corolla, the Tom's one, there was what was the other one? There was another one outside by Maxxis that had the SARD kit on it. There's another one that had a Penguin Garage little plate on the back that also had the Veris kit on it. And every single one of them was done very well, very good detail. And it gave me that just vision of what I wanted. I was like, okay, I see what I need to do. My idea is still in play. And it's still in place, and it will look flawless when ready. But it also gave me a push to say, this is why you do this, right? For this event. So that whole week, it was great. We had good food. We ate at this El Gordo taco spot that was fire. Okay? But I can't wait for next year. Because next year, I come with the first one out the way with more knowledge. My wife, she's even excited to come. She's like, I want to come next year. And she is not a car person, but just seeing the things, even the overland stuff and the tents and the things you can build on cars and vans. She was like, I'm down for next year. I'm coming through. So CarQuicks will be back at the SEMA Show next year. I will now gear up for another big show coming. That's the Houston Auto Show, where that comes out like January. So, but there's so much that's going to happen. So much is coming. I've been 10 toes down on the content. I've been 10 toes on this podcast. I'm going to continue. It's not stopping. This is just a recap of my SEMA Show. I'll be back to my regular scheduled program of the automotive news next week, and I'll probably pull in some information from this week into next week, or I don't know. I'll see how my schedule looks. I might throw it up this week all together and just bang out 2 for y'all. But as I always say, besides my normal tagline when I get out of this podcast, just thank you again for anybody who has listened, who has subscribed, who has followed the journey. It ain't over yet. It's a marathon. As Nipsey Hussle said, the marathon continues. So for anybody who's been watching this time, I thank you. And as I always say, do as you wish and do as you may. It's Cameron Biggs, your host. This is another episode of the CarQuicks Podcast. I'll see y'all around. Peace.